a global outrage over the mass killings by Sudan's paramilitary rapid support forces has done little to quell the violence in the city of el-Fasher. Claims by the RSF that it has arrested the perpetrators are being treated as a PR stunt. Those who have managed to flee the city recount indiscriminate violence and ethnic targeting after RSF fighters seized the key city in Sudan's Darfur region. Our next report contains scenes which you may find disturbing.
It's been a harrowing escape for thousands fleeing the violence in el-Fasher. Arriving at the nearby town of Tawila, they describe killings, rape, starvation, kidnappings and theft by fighters from the Rapid Support Forces, or RSF.
Many armed men arrived. We were not strong enough to oppose them. They tried to separate the women, but we refused. My husband is dead. They killed him.
Many have not made it out of el-Fasher since the RSF invaded the city. Social media footage appears to show evidence of their atrocities, including hundreds shot dead at a maternity hospital. The predominantly Arab militia is accused of ethnically motivated killings against non-Arab communities in its brutal war with Sudan's army. Humanitarian groups and the United Nations are demanding urgent intervention.
Can anyone here say that we did not know this was coming? We cannot hear the screams, but as we sit here today, the horror is continuing. Women and girls are being raped, people mutilated and killed with utter impunity.
Despite repeated warnings, there has been no major international effort to stem the fighting between the RSF and Sudan's armed forces. They've been at war for more than 2 years, sparked by two generals fighting for power following a coup. Both sides are accused of widespread atrocities during the fighting, which has killed tens of thousands. But the world is not just standing by. Foreign governments are said to be fueling the conflict. Multiple UN reports accuse the United Arab Emirates of providing weapons to the RSF, claims Abu Dhabi denies, and Sudan's armed forces have support from Egypt. While those are the two key players, there are plenty of others allegedly providing military support or with strategic interests in the conflict. They're being called on to put an end to the brutal war.
The genocide in el-Fasher is completely clear to the international community. But the international community remains silent. We hear nothing except expressions of condemnation and denunciation, which will not solve the problem.
The UN says more than 36,000 people have fled el-Fasher since Sunday, as the world watches the fate of nearly 180,000 civilians still trapped in the city remains unknown.
Well, Kashif Shafique is Country Director at Sudan Relief International and joins us from Port Sudan. Welcome to DW. Can you tell us what you're hearing from your teams in and around el-Fasher?
Thank you so much for having me today to describe the situation of the el-Fasher. Just to give a background, el-Fasher remained under siege over 15 months and there were no supplies, no food, no water. And inside el-Fasher cities, they were suffering. And in el-Fasher city itself, malnutrition rate was highest around the globe. And after the recent takeover of the el-Fasher city, what we are seeing is people who do not have anything but them reaching to different nearby localities, having no medicine, no food, no water, looking for the safety. The situation itself described as a catastrophic, and even I can say beyond the catastrophe. Thousands have fled, walking for days around the desert to reach different nearby localities, including Tawila, a town that has now become the last refuge for those escaping the violence. And on ground, the situation is that on top of 500,000 IDPs, more are coming. And unfortunately, on-ground organizations like Relief International is still struggling to get the aid through the cross-border. Unfortunately, the hardship of the
I wanted to ask you about that, about just to take in what you've just told us there, and then ask how you are able to get assistance in, the sorts of obstacles that you are facing in that endeavour.
You know, it's not really easy deal over here in Darfur. Everything first need to come to the Pyatt because Pyatt itself don't have any sort of major procurement hubs. And internationally, we need to procure it and send to Pyatt, and after that, through the cross-border. For example, the Tawila town, which is on 3 hours drive, and truck normally takes about week and more than week, and then sometimes the tension between different authorities on the border, it really delayed and hampers the delivery of the aid coming to the Tawila town. I mean, for example, if we want to mobilize anything from Pyatt towards Tawila, it will take minimum 2 weeks to arrive inside Darfur.
We have seen and are looking at now pictures of displaced people, millions driven from their homes. Where are they going?
So right now, they have a limited option to go somewhere because still, if you will see a neutral hub, the villa where majority are trying to be able to go over there. But the problem is the safe passage, which is not available. The protection of the civilian is one of the major concerns. And right now, as per our estimate, thousands are in open deserts and they are looking a safe haven. Unfortunately, right now, unavailability of the UN peacekeeping missions or any observer who can see on ground is limited. So it makes really difficult for the civilians to reach anywhere at any safe haven. We continue to receive the IDPs in Tawila, in Malid, in Malha, in Tina, and some are crossing through North Kordofan and reaching to White Nile.
Thank you for guiding us through that, Kashif. Shafique from Sudan Relief International.
Now, Nick Pyatt is with me and has been listening in. The interim country director for Sudan at the NGO Nonviolent Peaceforce, and joins me from Kalahi in the Democratic Republic of Congo. Good to have you with us. Those words from the Assistant Secretary General does beg the question, why wasn't more done to prevent these atrocities?
That's a really good question, Anthony, because this is something that has been predicted for many years now. For the NGOs that are working in the area, we have been advocating for the parties to conflict to be following the rules of war and to be following international humanitarian law for many months. But unfortunately, the world has stood by while this has unfolded over recent days.
Can only imagine it's a long list of concerns, but if pushed on one, what are you most concerned about at this point?
Nonviolent Peaceforce is most concerned about the protection of civilians in this environment. The stories that are going and can barely be put into words. So at this point, we're really concerned about how global pressure can be applied to ensure that hostilities can cease and allow people to safely escape from the areas in which violence is taking place, and for humanitarian actors to be able to respond to the needs that we are seeing that people coming into the safer areas.
So it's worth digging in on that. Are there any existing safe corridors that exist for these civilians, or are there any corridors being negotiated to ensure that they can get to safety?
Unfortunately not, Anthony. With a lot of the people that were remaining still in el-Fasher, while some remained because it was obviously their home, a lot of them were telling us for many months that they didn't want to leave el-Fasher, even though they knew it was very dangerous, because the routes out were equally dangerous, if not more so. What we have been hearing from people arriving, and what we know has been the case for many months, is that anyone trying to escape has been subject to extortion, to sexual assault, to detention, to torture, and to killings along the way. So at the moment, there are no safe routes out, and that is a huge concern for anybody still trapped in el-Fasher. And it means that people arriving into safer areas are coming traumatized, wounded, malnourished, and with no belongings to help them survive over the next coming weeks and months.
And as to the motivation, why is the RSF committing these atrocities? What's driving this level of violence?
For Nonviolent Peaceforce at the moment, we're actually focused entirely on responding to the needs of those that are affected by the conflict. And that is our primary focus.
Okay. In concrete terms, what measures can the UN or the international community at large take to prevent more people from being killed?
This situation requires decisive, coordinated and immediate global action from players at the very highest of levels. There must be pressure on all conflict parties to follow international humanitarian law, to allow civilians out, to provide conditions under which humanitarians can get in to provide assistance as well.
Nick Pyatt from the NGO Nonviolent Peaceforce, thanks so much for your time.
Thank you, Anthony.
Arjan Hehenkamp is the crisis lead for Sudan at the International Rescue Committee and joins us now from Nairobi. Welcome, Arjan. What concerns you the most at this point about the horrific situation in el-Fasher?
The major concern that we have today is the fact that the people of el-Fasher, which were estimated to be about 200 to 250,000, have not yet come to a place where they can be safe and where they can be assisted with humanitarian assistance. We're missing anywhere between 200 and 250,000, 5,000 of which have arrived in Tawila, where we work, which is 60 kilometers to the south of el-Fasher. But the rest of the population is still missing, and we are very disturbed about the fact that they haven't been able to come. And we're very worried, particularly with the videos that were circulating over the last couple of days, about their fate.
So what can you tell us about the civilians still trapped there? What might they be experiencing? I mean, are there any safe corridors that exist at all or that are being negotiated that might enable them to get out?
We have very little information about the situation in el-Fasher itself. There's a communication blackout. People cannot call. We cannot contact our partners anymore. We are hearing horrific information about people being detained, people being screened, people being killed. And very likely their movement is also inhibited so that they cannot come to nearby Tawila. We're hearing from those the lucky few who managed to escape in Tawila, stories about dead bodies littering the road, wounded crying out for help, people being executed. So yeah, all in all, we have all the information that we have indicates a very, very serious and concerning situation for the people still left in el-Fasher.
Is there anything that aid groups can do right now to help in this situation?
We can work in Tawila, and so we're supporting the people that are coming into Tawila with medical assistance, with water, with a little bit of shelter. We need to do much more. The funding situation in Tawila isn't very great either. We're only meeting 50% of the needs, but we're doing all we can to receive those who come, and we're waiting for more to come, hopefully in the next coming days and weeks.
As you say, you're doing all you can, but obviously aid groups can't solve the political situation. What should the international community be doing now to stop more people from being killed?
Yeah, the international community, having had their UN Security Council meeting yesterday, they need to act decisively. They need to go beyond words and beyond papers and make sure that there's an active policy of protection of civilians, of those who are left in el-Fasher. They need to leverage RSF and their sponsors in order to allow for safe passage of those in el-Fasher to Tawila or other safe destinations. And they need to make sure that they make funding available to us and to other organizations in order to be able to ramp up our response in Tawila and into el-Fasher when eventually we are able to get access to it.
I just want to clarify what you're saying. So you're calling for the international community to act decisively. Can you describe to us what that would actually look like? What would help to actually make this situation change?
I think the main and best route right now is by putting a lot of pressure on the sponsors of RSF, which are regional states, including the UAE, and to make them, to motivate them and to make sure that there's enough pressure onto them so that they pressure RSF into creating safe conditions for civilians, safe corridors for them to flee. And the international community can obviously make funding available to us, to the UN and other organizations, in order to be able to step up our response. But without that political action, without that political pressure on RSF and on its sponsors, we are fearful that the population in el-Fasher might not be able to come to safe destinations in order for us to be able to assist them.
Arjan Hehenkamp from the International Rescue Committee. Arjan, thank you so much for speaking to us today.
Thank you.
And we're going to speak now to peace and conflict researcher Gerrit Kurtz, also joining us from Nairobi. He's from the German Institute for International and Security Affairs. Good to speak to you, Gerrit. Why is the paramilitary rapid support forces, why are they committing these atrocities? Help us understand what is driving this level of violence.
I think there are probably several factors that shape this violence. First of all, it's revenge, or a feeling of revenge anyway. The siege of el-Fasher was very long, very bloody, of course, for the people trapped inside, but also for the RSF itself. It lost many fighters and even commanders in trying to control the city. And they also heard or hear again, hate speech from the other side, basically from the Port Sudan side, that they don't have a place in Sudan anymore, or some of their ethnic groups. So they see that as revenge, basically. But there's also an element of racism there, of an ideology of Arab supremacy that we've already seen a bit more than 20 years ago, when there already was a genocide in Darfur, and they are continuing or even completing that project now.
So you're talking about ethnic struggles, about racism. What about control of territory, resources, that kind of thing? I mean, is that also part of this struggle?
Sure, of course. El-Fasher is, of course, also, strategically located. And, of course, it was also the last provincial capital in Darfur that was not under the control of the RSF. And, of course, yes, the RSF fund themselves, especially by gold, but also gamma arabicum, so other resources. That does play a role, but that does not explain this kind of identity-based violence that we're seeing playing out right now, these mass atrocities that are taking place as we speak.
The RSF has announced that it had arrested several fighters accused of committing abuses during the capture of el-Fasher. It says investigations have been launched to bring these fighters to justice. Is this credible at all? I mean, is anyone going to be brought to justice for the killings in el-Fasher?
I think it's rather doubtful that this will be the case. But in any case, the RSF leadership is, of course, also responsible for this. It might be the case that the RSF leadership is not in full control, because that's how the whole organization, the whole militia is structured, as a sort of franchise undertaking. And they may not even have been in order. We don't know. Maybe there was an order, but for all this violence to happen. But they remain responsible. They still bear command responsibility because they, of course, also created this kind of organization, and that fuels also this kind of ruthless violence.
What do you see as a realistic solution to solving this deeply entrenched conflict in the longer term?
I think solving is perhaps even a big word. I think, in the more long term, once there is some kind of ceasefire and so on, but not too long term, certainly there needs to be a national conversation, a political dialogue among all the major, not just forces, but I mean civilian forces, of the different sides in Sudan, because this war has really erupted all the social differences also in Sudan, and has destroyed the state that was created by colonial regimes, until 1956. So, recognizing that and coming up with something new, a new social contract that will require a Sudanese-led and Sudanese-owned dialogue, as it's always said. And I've just come from speaking with some of these Sudanese, and I think they stress exactly that.
Peace and conflict researcher Gerrit Kurtz in Nairobi. Gerrit, thank you so much.
You're welcome. Thank you.